if you were to put a spotting scope on there, turn the magnification up, and tap the handle, the pod's going to move back and forth, like it's going to reverberate.
Mm-hmm.
The carbon has like a natural dampening property to it, so that it like stops it almost immediately. So if you bump that, you see that image shake for just a very brief amount of time, and then it's stopped.
All right, MC Ryan gave the nod.
See how I change his reality, Ryan?
Just with the Jedi mind tricks.
It's the beard.
Goes away tonight.
No, it does not.
Oh my gosh.
I'm telling you right now.
Why would I hurt you like that?
Welcome, everybody. We're going to try and regather our thoughts here after Mark just faked a claim that he would be getting rid of his beard this evening. If you haven't watched on YouTube in a while, you should, because you might not recognize the guy sitting next to me. It's glorious. Why would you ever get rid of that?
Ryan loves it more than I do, number one. If faking cutting this beard off is worse for Ryan than if I faked my death.
You know what you did that for? That was a power move. You wanted to show how much power you have.
Mark, if you faked your death, I would mourn for you. If you shave your beard, I mourn for all. I cannot have that on my heart.
I think you would hate me.
Yeah.
I would love you less.
I don't think we could get over that.
So
I don't want that.
With that being said,
can we do a new intro?
This
was terrible.
This is it. That is it. Ryan Muckenherd, as you can hear over there, is joining us, and today's discussion is revolving around tripods. And tripods are a really cool accessory that you can use in many different applications. There are a number of different tripods out there, and if you're listening to this, at the time you're listening to it, we're trying to time all this up, that it's coming out when Vortex has released a myriad. I've said that in a lot of videos lately, especially tripod videos.
Myriad.
A myriad of tripods in our lineup. We've completely revamped the whole thing. We'll get into some of those specifically. This isn't, intended to be a big Vortex commercial here, but we'll talk about tripods for sure. Why does Vortex, when they revamp their whole tripod line, why do we have 4 different ones? That's, I think, a question worth getting into. And Ryan, Mark, what do you guys think? Obviously, there's a big application of tripods in hunting, and we'll get into shooting as well, because we have a tripod that's very, very nicely fitted for competition shooting, precision rifle shooting, and potentially some hunting that where, maybe you're not packing in super far or anything like that. Are tripods, is everybody going out with a tripod, or is it still kind of one of those things where there's a fair amount going out without a tripod, and you kind of wonder, why would you do that? And, of course, not every hunt necessarily would require a tripod be in your kit, maybe.
It depends on where you are and what you're doing. I would say for the Western hunter specifically, and the Southwestern hunter, it's almost a prerequisite for success to support your various optics.
Somebody did a little paradigm shift on me the other day. I was looking at our YouTube or something comments, and they said, it's funny how everybody says, you need to go out and hunt Western game and go west to hunt antelope. But I live in California, so I have to go east to hunt antelope.
Oh.
And I thought, how about that?
That is some Inception level stuff.
Yeah, that kind of turns it on its head, doesn't it?
It does.
Doesn't it?
Yeah.
I'll say this, though. A recent trend that I've noticed, probably not recent because it's probably been around longer than I've been paying attention to it, but Midwestern hunting out of like box blinds and ground blinds, tripod use is very prolific.
Sure.
Shooters are setting up their rigs and shooting saddles and cradles for taking shots out of those blinds.
Mm-hmm.
When you've got mere seconds when an animal enters a food plot or a shooting lane and you've got to make a quick shot, it's got to be accurate.
Yeah.
Ryan, I'd say not only that, and this is actually something that I wanted to bring up, I guess in general, when we talk about long range, we always talk about the West, open landscape, right?
Yeah.
We really are, and what made me think of this was the other day, so I had the Fury ABs, had my dope, entered, ready to rock. No, I only had shooting sticks. I didn't have a tripod, but I was in a spot. I mean, look at some of these egg fields.
Oh, huge!
Right
around
huge.
here.
I mean,
yes.
endless,
hundreds to potentially 1,000 acres.
We have a 1,000-yard range facility here that we use with Vortex Edge, and it is in what used to be a big ag field.
Yep.
Right. So
Not even necessarily a big one.
Right.
long range tripods, spotting scopes, things like that. If you're not using those, if you're in the East or the Midwest where you have an open landscape, you're kind of missing out. If you're not going through the process of getting your ballistic data, when that big buck on a day of heavy pressure, aka Wisconsin opening day of gun season, when anything can happen, is standing out 500-600 yards in the middle of a field, be ready to execute that shot.
Yeah.
And you can do that with your ballistic data, but also tripod.
Yes.
Tripods are pretty slick. So we'll talk about, I think, shooting off tripods. Still, though, I would say by far and away, the primary use for tripods, outside of like photography and whatnot, we're going to stick with hunting and shooting, is for glassing. Would you guys say?
Yes.
Yes.
So glassing with a spotter or glassing with binos. And I know that certainly there's going to be a lot of talk in this podcast about how awesome glassing with binos is. Is that where you guys start, though? Because are you guys glassing with binoculars off a tripod more than you're glassing with a spotter off a tripod, or is it the other way around? Which would you say?
I would say they go in hand together, but if I could like condense this all into 1 hour of time, I would spend about 56 minutes behind my binoculars on my tripod.
I concur.
Okay. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So we're talking like percentages.
Yeah.
Or whatever. Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
Got it.
I mean, I love spotting scopes, and I use spotting scopes, Jim. But like it kind of depends on the hunt too. Like I'll take, for instance, black bear hunting this past August. Right, we hiked in a few miles. Pretty super cool. Rugged country, steep getting in, fairly heavy packs, and I brought binos and a tripod. I didn't even bring a spotting scope.
Right.
But I wasn't like trying to analyze like, I need to make sure it's like some giant bear. Like I needed to find out like, is that a bear?
Yeah.
So I think that sometimes that can dictate too. But yeah, I mean, exactly what Ryan said. 100% concur. Now I know a lot of guys that spend all their time glassing with a spotter, and they're very successful. And sometimes they're doing that because they are glassing at such extreme ranges that they are using that magnification to its fullest potential.
Where would that be? I have yet to find myself, even when we were in Arizona coos hunting, I have yet to find myself in a location where like glassing with a spotter is easy, I guess, if you will. I don't know if that's the right word, but binos are just, it's so nice scanning with binos. It's very difficult. You'd have to have a pretty big open landscape, which I believe exists. I just haven't been to one to hunt in.
I think it's when you're
be able to do that with a spotting scope.
Finding stuff that it really is further away. I think we were spending a lot of time glassing between probably 600 and maybe 1,500 yards.
Yeah.
And some guys are like, glassing for deer that or whatever that might be several hours away to hike to, or maybe they're even looking for something for tomorrow.
Yeah. In that case, I could see it being for sure.
I would imagine if Paul Neese was here, he would lend some ideas on that. It'd probably be sheep country in Alaska.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But even then, like I'd like to poll him on that sometime. And does a guy set up a spotting scope and start breaking a mountain apart, or do you start with a bino and then jump into the spotter?
Dude, for sure, start with the bino.
Right. And at that time, considering that species, it's probable that if you found a band of sheep with your binoculars a mountain away, you're probably going to then swap to your spotter because you've located them, you know where they are, and then you're going to start dissecting, like, are they rams, are they ewes? Trying to figure that kind of thing out, or is it a legal ram or that. Well, Paul was telling me one time he has glassed at over 4 miles at critters. Yeah.
I believe it.
And he says when you get really accustomed to it, you can't tell definitively like that's definitely ram. But he's like you get used to like ram behavior, and you can look at a band of sheep and state that is a band of rams, or that is used with kids. I think they call them kids. And I thought that was really interesting. And he's like, 4+ miles. That's just mind-boggling.
That is.
A long ways.
Yeah.
How do you determine? So, like, obviously, I don't know if I'm switching gears too soon, but obviously glassing is very important.
Yeah.
I mean, that's undoubtedly a thing. And anytime that you can be glassing, and we've even mentioned this, and I don't know exactly the order of how this is going to come out, but one thing that Adam Maxwell said once is that when you use an optic, any optic with some sort of magnification, it's used to enhance an image, right? And so a lot of times what we're doing is making the image bigger, making it more apparent so we can see, essentially be almost closer to it than we really are. And then also, of course, making the image look as close to real life as possible. And the higher end you go, the closer you get to that. But whenever you're doing that, it's very difficult to maintain some form of steadiness. And so that's where the tripod comes in, as this nice steady base. But the question then sort of remains in my head. There's a lot of different tripods out there. Why are there so many? And why am I even asking the question, which tripod is best for me? When I first heard about tripods, and I'm talking about like years and years ago, it was like, oh yeah, like a tripod is a thing. I just thought it was just like a general tripod. They're all the same.
Right.
But they're not. They can be decently specialized.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think we would want to attack that, like, what kind of optics are we going to be using and what kind of terrain are we going to be in? Are we going to be in a box blind? Or are we going to be like Mark's hunt for bears, heavy packs, high altitude, rough terrain packing in? And then, paring down features or attributes, weight, size, and things like that to try to match that up. I would say that I tend to lean more towards the smaller, lighter weight tripods. I give up height to trade for size, compactness, packability, and of course weight savings. With that being said, though, like if I'm going to run a small tripod, like a compact or like a subcompact tripod, you're going to give up quite a bit of stability when you're running big glass. So if we're running like an 85 Razor, a small tripod is not a great pairing with it unless you're very careful and you're like, I'm not going to extend my tripod past, say, 36 inches tall, or I'm never going to lift the neck, or you're going to have to make a tripod head selection accordingly. Like a ball head wouldn't be ideal for a big, heavy piece of glass, as much as a pan head would be. You really have to look at what you're doing, where you're doing it, and with what optic or what accessories. Like I wouldn't shoot off of a really compact tripod either, but I would shoot off of like an intermediate size tripod. You got to look at what you're doing with it, where you're going to be doing it.
Don't let me forget to come back to that.
Okay.
I have a question about shooting off of a tiny tripod.
Yes.
Okay, but yeah, for sure. So, like you said, I think a lot of times people want to see how small and lightweight of a tripod they can get by with, while still maintaining holding at their optics. So you have to start out with probably understanding where you're going to be hunting, what you're going to be in and around, how you're going to be packing in and getting out. That's one component, but also you need to understand what optics you're going to be using with it most of the time, right?
Yep.
Okay. So when it comes to a small tripod like this little Summit, so this is the Summit Carbon 2, this thing's pretty sweet, pretty tiny.
Very compact, very lightweight.
Very light. Where do you see, like, what's the use case for this? Where are you guys seeing this being used most of the time? And when is this in your pack and when is it not in your pack? Is that a good place to start?
Yeah.
Long treks, heavy packs, smaller optics, great bino tripod. It's a seated tripod. It's not one that you're going to stand with just because it doesn't extend to be that tall. Mm-hmm. You certainly could with like an angled spotting scope put it at full height, and then you're just going to be kind of standing and stooping over it. But I would say it's probably going to get a lot more use if you're seated or in kind of a compact spot, if you will. Ideal pairings are really any binocular in our line from the 1856 UHDs all the way down to like an 8x32 Diamondback if you wanted to do that. Or like the 11 to 33 Razor, the 15 to 45 Viper. Great pairing for that. You're going to save a ton of weight on the pod. These things are very scant. Being this small, this compact and lightweight, it's carbon tripod, which can help sometimes with weight. But it's going to be a minimalist setup. It's going to be, you need a tripod to stabilize your optic, but you also have to put a precedence on weight savings and size savings inside of your pack. So like I was just on a hunt in Nebraska last week. This is the tripod to bring on that because you need something small, you need something light, and I'm not going to be standing with my optics.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm predominantly binocular tripod glassing. I had a Razor 11-33 in the pack. If I had found a buck that was bedded up somewhere, I really wanted to get a good look at him, swap the binos off, put the spotter on there. Perfect pairing.
This is the tripod you want to take with you.
Yeah.
If
That's a good way of actually, really good way of putting it.
If you've been on hunts where you're like, man, I'd like to have the tripod, but God, I don't feel like carrying that thing. Leave it in the truck. Leave it at home. This is the one that you go, yeah, I'll throw it in.
This is the one that the most people will ask, can blank work on that?
Mm-hmm.
Because they want to have it as small and lightweight as possible, which makes perfect sense.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I guess I personally, just because of what I carry, right? I pretty much, if I'm going to carry a spotter, I carry a 65 millimeter razor. That's angled. That's what I like to carry. And then, those 12 UHDs are like, might as well be like a child. And to me, they've worked great on this setup. Now,
Oh, wait. Oh, they're like a child to you.
they're like a child to me.
Oh, I'm tracking now.
Yep.
Sorry.
Lot of equations going around my head trying to work that one out. I'm just,
12 power. Child. Mini human.
Yeah, they're like a child. They're always running around, getting lost, bugging you, asking you questions. Are we
eating
there
your
yet?
snacks.
Oh, buddy. Leaving
now I'm just
goldfish in the
picturing-
back seat.
Now I'm just picturing you set down your UHDs at 12 somewhere, and then you just look over, and they're in your backpack with like some goldfish, just crumbs all over the place.
Probably yelling at him. But no, so I really like this tripod for that. Now I will say the height, whether you can run it at a standing height might depend on a person's stature. But also it is lightweight, right? So the further you get it up, potentially the less stable it's going to be. How I like to glass, I'd say 99%. I'm always in a sitting position, so that's less of a problem for me. Now, if your selection and how high you need your tripod to go can be terrain-based too. If you're in a flat landscape with a lot of tall brush that you need to see over, you might 99% of the time be standing and glassing. So just
Makes sense.
a lot of different variables come into play, that's for sure.
When you're seated and glassing, I've been in this position many times. You guys have many times. It might even sound funny to be something to bring up as a topic of conversation, but I have heard people around here even argue about it. How you sit behind a tripod, because comfort is key,
Yes.
in my opinion, when you're glassing. Because if you're uncomfortable while glassing, your glassing session, if you will, is not going to be nearly as productive as if you were comfortable, because all you're concentrated on is my butt hurts, my back hurts, my whatever. How do you guys recommend someone remains seated behind? And I know it depends a little bit probably on, like, are you up against a tree? Are you out in the open? Whatever. Are you on a rock? Are you going downhill, uphill? But in general, like, how do you guys usually get situated with a tripod? Some people, like, they get in the tripod.
I get in it.
I get in it.
All about that.
All up in it.
All up in
Yep.
that tripod.
I find my position first, like where I'm comfortable. I position my pack behind me as a rest. If I
Yeah.
don't have that, then hopefully I've got some terrain feature.
I think it's worth bringing an empty backpack to have a
You're bringing two
a
packs.
backrest. No, but
Oh,
like
okay.
if even you're not carrying a bunch of stuff, man, that little lumbar thing in the back, and you sit down, you lean back into it. It's like having a chair.
I felt like an idiot on opening day of gun season this year because I went out and it was like, didn't have to go far. It was on some private land, and I didn't bring a backpack with me because I was like, it's easy if I have to go get something. It's not that far. But then I was sitting on a snowy log, and my butt got super cold. I was like, man, if I had a backpack to sit on, or I could just sit down here and I could just like rest up against a backpack. And I was like, even if it was empty. So to your point, Mark,
Yeah.
even if you got to take an empty backpack, or if one's stuffed with like a puffy jacket or something. Okay, carry on.
So I personally, I dig in. I get into the position in which I want to be in for an extended period of time. So I'm not like cutting circulation off to the bottom of my legs or sliding down the hill. And then I position the pod around me. for stability. And with all of our new pods, it actually a lot of our historical pods as well, we have the ability to adjust the legs at varying angles with these clever leg locks on there. So if I'm in a hillside, I can open the tripod legs up, and then I can extend the legs to meet the terrain feature behind me, if you will, or to the sides of me. And then a lot of times I'll run the leg forward of me just at the angle that it comes out naturally, and then at full extension. And so I'll be in the tripod, not too terribly far away from about this position. So I'm in it. I'm snuggled in.
So you found one of the spots in the triangle that two legs makes. You got in it, and then the third leg that sticks out directly forward of you is just in between your legs, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Correct. So the tripod's stable. I'm in it. I'm close to it. I can support it. It's not far away. I don't have to lean forward to peer into it because that'll wear you out. That's very fatiguing. As little, I guess, strain that I can put on myself, the longer and more effectively I can glass. And what's super slick about these is just the ability to articulate those legs at different angles to make that work. And then of course to micro adjust the length on the legs. That makes it all the more comfortable.
It's extremely similar to shooting and natural point of aim. Because like if you're shooting and you have muscle tension somewhere that you're using muscle tension to get on your reticle on target, that's something that will eventually break down over time. It'll then cause you to be less accurate. Whereas if you get yourself set up in a position where just naturally at rest, you don't need any muscle tension to just have the reticle be on the target, you will be more accurate. It's very similar. If you have muscle tension while you're trying to glass in whatever position you're in, it's not going to end well. You're going to be shifting around a bunch every 5 minutes.
Yeah, you're going to get tired, uncomfortable.
Start making noise because you're moving all kinds of crap around, making a big scene, from some deer is like, look at that bundle of sticks over there that's all moving around.
Take breaks when you should be glassing.
Yeah.
Just imagine having to drive your vehicle for several hours, but it's not, your seat position isn't the position at which you normally drive. And then you have to adjust yourself to the wheel. It's like when I drive my dad's truck, he's like, do not touch my seat position.
Took me forever to get that just right.
Yeah. So you kind of make the pod fit you when you're doing it. And they with the amount of adjustability these have on board, you can easily do that and be very comfortable for a long period of time.
Mark is also, actually, I know I'm, you are as well, Ryan. Most people are a fan of having the pan handle forward, not back.
Yes, hits me in the chin.
Right.
I'm going to do this.
Yeah, that weird little thing.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, a lot of times I end up with it back here.
And I'll tell you how I got on that. I saw a bunch of pictures of some really cool dudes doing it. I thought, well, I wonder if that works. And then I was like, why have I not been doing this my whole life?
I don't know.
They were right.
It's a personal preference thing, though, because I do know guys that are hardcore Western hunting glassers. I mean, they're good at it, and they run the handle to the rear or towards them, I guess. And do you have a difference, Ryan, if you're running a spotter versus a bino on your tripod?
Not really.
Always forward.
Yeah. Because I run that 11 to 33. I'm just going to say now 100% of the time. I own 65 millimeter razors. I have 2 of them. I run the 11 to 33 every time. So because it's the same size as the binos,
same weight, sometimes lighter than
sometimes.
a lot of binos.
Yeah.
The presentation is exactly the same to me, except for one's angled, one's straight.
Sure, that makes sense.
So I'm at about the exact same position relative to the tripod every time. So I just run forward like this.
Here's a question: why are angled spotters more popular, but nobody uses? There is no angled binocular.
That's a good question. Do we
Everybody's like everybody who uses binos like, get an angled.
Do we
spotter.
say patent pending now?
Patent pending.
Okay.
Yes, we do. Thank you for reminding me.
Yeah, no worries.
I forgot that's how that works.
No worries. I think the bino is very intuitive. It just becomes an extension of our eyes at that point in time. There it is.
Right.
The spotter being so high magnification, it's not so intuitive. Perhaps.
Maybe you're right.
Thoughts?
That is a very interesting question, Jim. And I'm trying to run through using and it we'll say an angled 12 by 50.
You wouldn't do it via the hands.
A lot of people, well, that's true. A lot of people are always like, straight spotting scope, so uncomfortable to get behind them. You're always doing it. And it's like, well, do you glass off a tripod with binos? I just thought of this. And I'm one of the people who's like, no, I would never get a straight spotter. But now I'm questioning myself.
It is a good point. I find so much more use out of an angled spotter, though.
They are very useful for lots of reasons.
You can go into a different podcast and
different
angled versus straight and all that good stuff.
I'm not going to change.
There's good reasons for both.
I started with a straight spotter and I went to an angle. I can't go back now.
That's fair. It's fair. We should talk about some of the cool stuff about these tripods too.
Yeah.
Because there are new tripods here, and actually a lot of them, aside from the probably last one we'll get to, which is more of like a dedicated shooting tripod, or really heavy-duty one. Really, all these are the same, just with some different form factor features. But you've got, with this little Summit Carbon, we'll start with it, legs are made of carbon fiber, which is super neat. Keeps it very lightweight, but also very strong. You've got these little twist lock leg things, 4-leg sections. You've got a pan head, which then can pan side to side, and that can obviously go up and down, and then you use your little etch-a-sketch skills to get to the exact spot you need. And they are Arca Swiss compatible. So compatibility as far as accessories that you put on the tripod is now dramatically expanded from the old line of tripods that we have, because there's all this stuff out there now that has these Arca Swiss compatible footprints, which is basically just a dovetail means of attaching something to a tripod head, which is pretty slick. And they come with a little quick release base plate though that indexes right into that Arca Swiss spot, and then that way you can use the 1/4-20 threaded bolt to then thread into your spotting scope body or a binocular adapter. So that's pretty cool. They are sweet little tripods. They've got the center column as well, so you can extend them beyond just the means that their legs could get them a little bit higher. The center column also can be used for hanging a weight off of for lowering the center of gravity. Do you guys do that a lot? Have you guys found yourself using the little counterweight hook much?
I have.
Is it in what situation? Because I feel when it gets super windy, maybe and stuff is getting kind of top heavy and it wants to topple over. Maybe I could see.
So when I used to run larger tripods, I did it, but then I migrated towards smaller tripods, and it was just for wind mitigation. The tricky part is, if it's really windy and you hang a pack on it, you have now also hung a sail. So then it makes it worse. But it's there. You certainly don't have to run it. And you can remove it too. So the center columns on the three, what we'll call sporting tripods here.
Hunting tripod,
yeah. They are removable. So if you want to save additional weight, you can take them out and it's not going to adversely affect the function of the tripod. Short of, you won't be able to extend the center column all the way up.
Right. So it's a split center column.
Yeah, correct. Yep, correct. So they do just thread out, the hooks thread off, and you can certainly do that. And actually, I think all of my pods right now that I've set up, I've taken the center column, the lower half off.
You do?
Yeah.
I use that feature all the time.
Well, I feel like if you're the kind of person who likes to get in the tripod when you're glassing, that center column's always poking you in the belly and all that stuff. I mean, it's kind of a...
Well, maybe I should remove it because
Someone's going to comment about that.
Shoot.
So, nobody likes that.
Which is... So, because I do like to get in the tripod, that's probably why... Come on, guys.
I'm sorry.
You got... Oh. Really?
Carry on.
That's probably why I'm using it. Because right, wrong, or otherwise, the way that I tripod glass, I probably don't fiddle with leg angles as much as you do, Ryan.
I have noticed this.
It might be out of laziness.
No, it's not.
I fiddle more with leg length.
I fiddle with leg length, but I also extend the center column because I generally run a leg kind of through.
Yeah. I've seen Mark do this, and I've tried it too because, to your point, it's like a lot less goofing around.
I don't know if other people do this or not.
I can't.
So
don't
take this as the way you ought to use a tripod.
Mark will go kind of cross-legged through, like you're sitting on the ground. You kind of cross your legs. I don't know what they call that, crisscross applesauce.
Yep.
Okay. Right.
There was another name for it that we outlawed.
Understood.
Had to cancel it.
Understood. And then he just like sets the pod over his legs. Now I try this and it's like, oh, that's very uncomfortable. I've got long femurs, so I can't really do it the same way. But I noticed that when we were on the range doing the reloading for the Extreme podcast, you were out there and you just kind of fell right in and set that up. And I thought, well, heck, if he can do it, I can do it. I can't do it. So I've
Very limber.
Yeah, I've got to like run my legs through each section of the tripod in different directions. In which case, to your point, having the ability to raise and lower the center column is going to help a lot. I just pull mine out because I have to.
Yeah.
I guess, and that just goes to show like the versatility of
everybody
being able to customize the tripod to how you want to glass.
Everybody gets in their tripod differently.
Yep.
True.
It's not like pants. We don't all put them on one leg at a time.
Single turn on the handle.
Single turn on the handle to get it unlocked. You move it around, tension it, and whatnot. So
Up, down, left, right. Tighten her back up.
Extremely articulate head. The new heads that we've come out with, these are pretty fancy.
Yeah.
Super simple too, which I really appreciate. The complexity of a tripod head can be very frustrating in the field. If you have different like axial movements of the head and you don't have it positioned just so, and then it flops over on you when you're trying to get on a target, that's mega frustrating.
For sure.
So this, like you guys were talking, it's just a quick tension release, and then we have full articulation in all ranges of motion, and then a quick tension tight, and it's good to go.
Literally is righty-tighty, lefty-loosey to operate that.
It's a shared head that goes across this, and then the next two tripods we'll get into, the High Country and the Ridgeview, if I'm not mistaken, Ridgeview Carbon. And its maximum capacity is 22 pounds. Now, that's where I want to ask you, Ryan. You were saying, I wanted to bring this up again, you wouldn't shoot off of a really tiny tripod.
Right.
Which I get. There's like a lot of intuitive why would you? But I also, this is another one of those things I had to question. And so, tiny tripod, like the Summit Carbon 2. It's got the Arca Swiss pattern on top, 22 pounds capacity. You have yourself, and Mark, you have not quite to the level that Ryan has, but like lightweight hunting rifle. Your little Kimber Mountain, whatever. And
that's why I borrow Ryan's.
Right. So, very lightweight rifle. It's not going to overload the tripod in terms of if you put it on it. If you use some sort of a cradle or something like that. No problem there. And the tripod is more substantial, I would argue, than a bipod.
Yeah.
So why would you say, like, oh, I'd never shoot off of a small tripod, but then a lot of us put bipods on our guns that we take out?
So backing up then, because you're absolutely right. The limiting factor before was going to be the head more than anything.
Sure.
So when you start loading that much weight on the head, if it can't take it, it's going to fold. And it's going to tip out of the way, and then you got to reset. With the new heads, they can take the weight. Where it gets a bit iffy on small tripods, and this is probably more the center column than anything. So if the center column is not as heavy or as strong, you'll get some flex in it. And if you preloaded it too much, you could collapse the center column if it doesn't have a meaty enough grab on it. But if you look at this, so this is taller than any Harris hunting bipod that I presently run. And so I would have to get the next tallest tripod, which if I'm going to extend if I'm going to extend two legs, then I'm going to like induce some inherent wobble to it.
Sure.
And flex of their own.
Correct.
As well.
So this would be more stable. I guess when I made that statement, I should have said tripods prior to this one. I wouldn't have shot off of just because they're so small. Their heads were not as adept as this. This I think you could, and you made a fantastic point. So these shared heads between these three, I would not make the statement with the new Summit Carbon 2 that you couldn't run an 85 millimeter razor off of this because it's the same head as on the High Country 2 and the largest version of the carbon version that we have, the Ridgeview. So it is kind of a moot point. You could run an 85 millimeter razor on here. I could also shoot off of it as well.
It might be a little bit more top heavy and stuff because it doesn't have as wide of a base and whatnot. But I figured I was curious about that one because I was like, well, I mean, it's actually more substantial than a bipod.
So yes, so to your point, now I think that my point is negated by the fact that we've come out with a more adept tripod that can support that. The head can take it. The carbon legs are a big key in stability too. And I do want to touch on that because some folks may say, well, there are lighter aluminum tripods in this one. And that could be true. There are lighter aluminum tripods in this one. Carbon can make a lighter tripod, but not always. So sometimes we can get carbon legs that they end up actually being slightly heavier because the leg diameter has to increase, and then we've got resin in the carbon that's fairly heavy. What it does do, and this is absolutely unquestionable, is increase just inherent stability relative to like size of the leg, size of the pod. And a quick test to this, Mike McDowell showed me this one too. If you were to put a spotting scope on there, turn the magnification up, like look at something, and tap the handle, the pod's going to move back and forth, like it's going to reverberate. The carbon has like a natural dampening property to it, so that it like stops it almost immediately. So if you bump that, you see that image shake for just a very brief amount of time, and then it's done.
Interesting.
Yeah,
it settles back in.
Yeah,
a lot faster.
It has to be something with just how incredibly stiff carbon fiber is.
And so
I guess that's why tuning forks aren't made out of carbon fiber.
when
Bring up a good point.
so
Now you know.
when Mike and I were talking about tripods, this is a couple of years ago, he was asking me what pod I ran just out of curiosity, and I was explaining it to him. And he was like, you should switch to a carbon. And I had some aversion to it for other reasons. And then he showed me that test compared to a carbon tripod, and it was like, whoa. So if it was windy, you would have less of that going on. If you bump it while you're looking, you would have less of this going on. That was very eye-opening. Now, to speak to this tripod, it's extremely lightweight.
It is.
It's not even 3 pounds.
No, it's vaporware. It's like helium. So that's really quite nice.
And the carbon doesn't get cold.
No, and it does not go
and...
ding when you hit it. So
yeah.
If you have your rangefinder dangling around your neck, or if you have some accessory or something and you hit it, it's just a thud instead of a ding and a ring. That's very loud. I know some guides in Arizona that do not run aluminum tripods for that reason alone. They will only, these guys are like sheep, mule deer, and elk guides. They will only run carbon pods so that sound doesn't occur. And you can, you could wrap your aluminum tripod leg with like, what's the athletic tape?
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Then you add weight. That stuff's kind of bulky and heavy.
Yeah, and that'll mitigate that. But
oh my gosh, I just called tape heavy.
It's happening, Jim.
You're turning into your brother.
It's happening.
Oh boy. Well,
tape.
So heavy. So, with all that said, there's some of the features and stuff, and using the Summit Carbon as an example, I think is a good one because many of the features around these next two tripods are very similar. They're just sort of a step up in terms of size and in terms of weight with the High Country 2. The High Country 2 is technically next up on the table here. This one is specifically our more entry level tripod. So I think it's about $100 less than the Summit Carbon.
Yes.
But it's an aluminum tripod. It's a little bit larger. So aluminum legs, a little bit larger. You could stand behind this one in terms of if you're of pretty average height, and at least more easily, certainly, than the Summit. And that's kind of, it does have flip lever locks on the legs, which I know some people prefer.
I am definitely a lever lock guy.
I know. And I know Mark is as well. I personally don't really care.
So to speak to that a little bit, so I just made that statement. I'm definitely a lever lock guy. Why doesn't this have lever locks in? Physical constraints of like manufacturing. Putting a lever lock on this would be a very small, delicate lever lock. Mm-hmm. This is stronger, and that's why we did it. It's going to be easier to use. It's going to be easier to manipulate. I don't have huge hands, but these are like very gratuitous knobs. And activating them when they're in the closed position or fine-tuning them is super easy to do. And this ends up being a stronger product than a comparably sized lever lock. We would have to have just this itty-bitty little thing on there.
I won't say what it is, but I have a product that has little carbon fiber legs, and it has lever locks on the extendable legs, and I have busted those stupid lever locks. I can't even say how many times.
Because they're just itsy-bitsy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very delicate. But anyway, on this case, though, this is a larger tripod, And so we end up having the ability to put on a beefier, stronger lever lock on the legs. But, in that case, then there's trade-offs. They are a little bit easier to get to. You literally flip them and they're unlocked. You don't have to twist anything. But then, of course, as well, they're going to potentially get caught on more stuff in your pack. So it's really, I feel like this is part of the reason why I just say I don't really care. Because if somebody handed me a tripod with lever locks, I'd be like, oh, cool. If they handed them to me with twist locks, I'd be like, sure, let's party. So otherwise, though, I mean, it really is just kind of like a bigger aluminum version of the Summit that we were just talking about.
Very utilitarian.
Very.
Yep. We are going to gain a little bit of weight. We're going to gain about 1.25 pounds over the Summit Carbon or thereabouts.
I think it's coming in at right about 4, isn't it, or something like that?
Yes.
But so I stand 6'4". I could run a 65 millimeter or an 85 millimeter straight spotting scope or a pair of binoculars from a standing position on this one, and it's not overly large. I've certainly run larger tripods in the past where they're much longer than this, and then they take up a ton of pack space, or you have to anchor them to the outside of the pack in some strange fashion that becomes cumbersome. But it is kind of a nice blend. Like I said, utilitarian in design and function, still not overweighted. It's something I could certainly pack in, especially if I was going to be running larger equipment and I wanted something more stable. Or if you're going to be in that terrain like where you guys were hunting coos deer, it was ocotillo and creosote bush and cactus and tall stuff you have to look over.
My skin is tingling
Just thinking of that.
thinking about it. And for a $200 tripod, pretty solid.
I was
Rock
going to
solid.
say you'd be hard pressed to get a better tripod for $200. And I think there's certain scenarios, like you said, you're talking about different types of scenarios where this might be actually an asset.
Yes.
That weight is like, maybe you don't want to carry it, but it can be a benefit too.
Yeah.
So, definitely measure what you're going to be doing with it. The less expensive option might be a better fit.
Yep.
I would say that this has more universality in application than this. So if you're going to have just one, I would say step up in size to the high country too. Save some money.
Yep.
Spend it on tags.
No, if you want to get real fancy pants, then there's the Ridgeview Carbon, which is over there. And now we're kind of
that's what I'd
jump.
do.
We can kind of jump through the. Well, I know Mark would. Mark likes fancy. Now we can kind of jump through them too because again they are very similar. This is just essentially like a bigger version, taller version. Really is the more proper way to call it. The taller version of the Summit Carbon 2. And when we say taller, I mean it gets up to it's over 70 inches potential in height. I think about 73 inches, which is massive.
Yeah, big tripod.
And you could be like practically 7 feet tall and stand behind this thing. So if that is your thing, then I think that's pretty much what you're going to want to go for.
If you need height and lightweight.
And also a wider base for bigger optics because of the longer legs, you get a wider base. So yeah, and it is very lightweight. So it's kind of like, it's even taller, of course, than the high country, but it's kind of like the lighter weight, taller version of that. Then, so
Great tripod.
Like the other
that's pretty much all. Great tripod.
These tripods are all doing different things really well, right? It's not out of the realm of possibilities that a person is doing a variety of activities and needs multiple tripods, right? They may want a Summit Carbon 2 for their backpacking tripod.
Yeah. But
they might want a different tripod to do something else that's just going to do that job better. And we've talked about these kind of these universal heads, the Arca Swiss plates. If you have a couple different versions, it's nice to have that cohesion between the plates because you can just swap things in and out, no problem.
Yeah, yeah. I could see you're a more technical person who's really kind of gear, I guess, aware. They have a lot of different gear and they're always swapping things in and out. I could see them getting a Ridgeview Carbon and a Summit Carbon, whereas your person is like, I want one to do everything, would get the high country too.
Sure. I agree with that.
That's just personal.
Yeah.
opinion,
I like that
but
gear aware.
They just always know. Very aware.
Some people say it's a problem. I like the way you frame it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Gear aware.
Yes. Exactly.
There's no problem having more than one tripod either. Like micro stoves, you can have up to 5. And will think you're doing just fine.
Yeah, when I get home and you bought what? You bought another what? And I'll say, hey, I am just gear aware.
Gear aware.
Yep.
That's the
That's what I tell my wife when I get more car parts. Very car aware.
You're car aware.
Yes.
Yeah.
Who can fault you, James?
I don't know.
Not me.
So
I always support you.
do we get into, because these 3 tripods that we mentioned all achieve in the end they're used in very similar scenarios. Now it's personal preference and things like that go into it, like we've already said. Do we jump into the Radian carbon tripod next, the shooting specific one, or is there anything else that we've missed here in terms of these particular pods?
I don't think so. No, I think that when we get into the Radian, we're getting into a really specialized piece of equipment.
Very much.
It's a different animal.
It is. It is still a tripod because it does have 3 legs, but its similarities probably stop there. And we get into now a really like a dedicated shooting system accessory.
Right. So let's talk about it.
Yeah.
It's a
I'll move it
sweet
to the
product. I
front
love.
here.
I love looking at it. And I also love climbing around on it like a jungle gym because I have done that. It's exceptionally strong. Now, it's not the tripod by any means that you probably want to be packing in on a mountain with you or for many, many miles in a backpack. It weighs up to somewhere around 7 pounds, depending on which head you have on it. There are 2 head options for this one, which we'll get into a little bit there. But this is the Radian Carbon, and it's just... Oh, here we go. MC Ryan again on the spot brought out another Radian Carbon with the other head on it. So a tripod that came via a request of many of the different shooters around here at Vortex and also from customer feedback, requesting a tripod that was made basically for shooting off of precision rifle, whether that's in a match or whether, who knows, maybe you're going out and you're predator hunting or you're doing something where, again, you didn't have to make that giant pack in, but you have this amazingly steady base to fire from. And again, we get these carbon legs and that helps with all the things Ryan said, dampening, but also it helps keep it relatively lightweight for how strong and large it is. You do have the twist locks in this case, which are nice and low profile. And then you have really all the same features in terms of the legs can splay out any which way. And then you have a head on top with the Arca Swiss footprint to index in various different rifles and chassis systems that have the Arca Swiss pattern right on the bottom so that you can lock it in. You can also slide the rifle fore and aft and determine what portion of the rifle, and how you have it weighted and all that stuff. So these things are really sweet. Now, they do have 2 different head options, and the head options are far different than the ones that were on the previously discussed tripods. So those ones had maximum weight capacities of 22 pounds. It's not the legs that are the limiting factor so much of tripod weight capacities, but actually rather the heads. In this case, these tripods you can get with what we call a leveling head or a ball head. And those are both capable of holding some pretty astounding weights. The ball head can hold up to 55 pounds. And the leveling head can hold up to 44 pounds. So even your big-time heavy precision rifle builds out there that are upwards of 20, 30 pounds, these will hold that up with no sweat. I think the interesting thing is sort of which one someone would pick. And luckily, if you pick one and you decide to go for something like this and you want to swap out because you wish you would have gotten the other one, they are actually interchangeable, and we sell the other, whatever head you don't have as an accessory item. But walk us through, Ryan / Mark. Mark, you like just hunting, so anyway, maybe Ryan. But walk us.
I kind of wanted to rebuttal or refute that statement. But there's some truth. There's
all you could
some.
respond with was a nod.
There's some truth
Merely
to
a
it.
hunter.
Yeah.
Describe for us the difference between the two, why someone would pick one over the other.
This is a spirited debate. When we were doing kind of the initial range days with these.
Is it down in consumer sales? Are you guys
Yeah.
all mad at each other about this?
Well, because it was split. It was like 50-50 as to who liked what and why. I'm not a PRS shooter. There's a couple guys on the consumer sales team that do PRS quite often. And
They are, in fact, PRSers.
yeah, PRSers.
Precision rifle series. If somebody's not.
Constantly PRSing.
Yep. They do a lot of talking about sandbags and Arca rails and things like this. they both have application and warrant within that shooting discipline and similar shooting disciplines. And I think when it really boils down to it, you get a greater degree of articulation and movement out of the large ball head, albeit with some complexity.
Yes.
So there are more knobs, more levers, and until you become versed in what each knob is going to accomplish, whether it's a pan tilt function or I should say pan function or a tilt function, a lock function or an unlock function, you may look at it and think, this thing there's a lot going on.
It's not overly complex.
It's not.
Though. Like, use it for like 20 minutes and you probably got it.
Correct.
Yeah.
One thing I will say about the ball head,
I already got it figured out. It's intuitive.
even though there is a little bit more complexity, the amount of adjustability in it and then like the presentation of the arm, like up, down, left, right, is greater. You can do quite a bit more with it with respect to shooting angles.
Yeah, you can rotate this all the way up to 90 degrees.
Correct. And so you could do a very darn near vertical shot in either direction. Which is pretty cool. You can't so much with the leveling head, but you can get a ton of articulation out of it as well. And for most shooting on relatively horizontal surfaces with some incline decline, you can get a lot of it too. And what's neat about this, so this will use, if we can rotate that tripod a little bit.
Yes, sir.
I don't know what we're going to call this. We're going to call this the master knob.
Yeah, master knob makes sense. It tensions the ball head's adjustment.
Yeah, so you're going to do a good majority of your gross adjustments using the large knob. So you're going to be holding your firearm, supporting your firearm with your strong hand, and you can do a lot of adjustment with that. Most of the adjustments you would need to execute the shot. On the leveling head, it's actually, instead of having like an extended center column, this is, I guess for all intensive purposes, your control here. And so when twisted, locked, that's it. We're locked in place. We can detension that or untension that, and then we get quite a bit of articulation out of it. We can do some tilt and a ton of pan. So anything left or right is fair game. Some tilt, very fluid, super articulate. When I was asking Nick Laufenberg, I said, okay, so you're a PRS guy. You do a lot of the circuit and you do a lot of the matches. Which one would you use? He thought that perhaps the ball head, just because you get a little bit more adjustability out of it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I can see that. Now, like I try to picture myself running both of them, and I think of, okay, we just made some precision rifles, Mark. So I'm thinking about my rifle sitting in this, and I'm thinking, Ryan, to your point. Now, let's say that I'm going to use the ball head, and the neat thing about the ball head is that you can adjust the actual ball head itself. And you can adjust its tension so that, it depends on how it changes how hard it is or how easy it is to just move that around inside the head. And so that can basically move in any direction, it seems. And I've got it partially locked. See, this is part of the thing that I feel like I could possibly run into. So right now it's very easy to move the ball head all around. I can articulate it all the way up to 90 degrees to one side, and I can adjust that tension to make it a little bit harder to move. Then I can fully lock the ball head in place with this smaller lever up near the top. Okay, cool, locked in place. And now I can independently pan. So I have locked in some level of up and down, so to speak. And now I unlock the panning motion, then I can independently pan, which then allows some level of not having to worry about it going up or down while I'm going only side to side. That is really cool. It's very precise, but I don't know if it's fast. And so where I would see myself if I were trying to be quick, you go over to the leveling head and there's literally only one knob, so to speak, and it's this handle that you hold on to on the lower portion where a center column would be, and you unlock, you can adjust lock, and then you're in place. I don't know though, because once it's unlocked, it can go anywhere.
Correct.
It can go anywhere, whereas the ball head is a little bit more controlled in whether you're moving up and down or left and right.
And that's the point that Mr. Laufenberg had made to me. He said, so most of the shooting positions that they encounter in a lot of these matches are like, you're at elevation A, target is at elevation either same or different, right? Mm-hmm. It's either going to be the flat field of fire, you're going to be slide downward, slide upward. And to your point exactly, he would set his pitch at, prior to the course of fire initiating, and then he would just rely on his pan. He liked that better on that version. Now, if there's going to be a wide array of movement up and down as opposed to just left and right, I think it's probably going to come down to shooter preference at that. But he touched on exactly what you just said. Once you unlock this under the weight of the rifle, it's free to go wherever gravity wants to take it. And so you may find yourself going, whoop, overextended, come back and re-engage.
Yeah.
So,
and it is kind of one thing that your right hand, let's say you're right-handed. Your right hand is, okay, now I got it in the right spot. Now my right hand has to hold it in the right spot while my left hand then tensions the whatchamacallit.
Sure.
Yeah, I could see that. You know, I have heard once, and this doesn't come from a ton of experience myself yet, because I think I've only shot off the ball head at this point. But I have heard, and it makes sense intuitively, that the leveling head, once locked in place, is more steady than the ball head. And that's solely because the ball head winds up putting the platform up a little bit higher with the potential for a little bit more wobble, I would say, in your sight picture. Whereas the leveling head is really low and compact right to the actual tripod body.
So we took it to task when we were on the range that day, and so we started with the gun dismounted. So we had established like the pan tilt requirements for the shots that we were going to take, and we set up a little course out at the long range, and then from a position of like like a low ready or something like that, come up, engage the tripod with the Arca Swiss plate, lock it in place, and then start panning through targets. And I think it really did come down to the shooter and their ability to stabilize the rifle without the tripod, like micro stabilizations of left, right, up, down, on whether they were better with the ball or the leveling head. I do think that the ball, if you have a flat field of fire, like we don't have to worry about going up, down so much, I think that the ball head was nicer.
Yeah.
Where I think this is probably more something I'm going to gravitate towards if I was setting up a gun for like doing predator calling that I wasn't.
So I was literally just about to say.
Yep. Or if I was setting up, a box blind situation and I wanted an extraordinarily stable rest, but I did want some articulation and some movement, this is the head that I would run. I'm not probably going to have to worry about coming way up or coming way down on the pod. I am going to have to worry about left, right, and some vertical correction, not a ton. So I'd probably be just like my hobbies and habits more inclined to jump into the leveling head than I would the ball.
Yeah, I think if you're essentially just shooting and not doing super high angle stuff, that leveling head is going to be the ticket.
Yeah.
I think if you're doing the high angle stuff, I think if you're maybe glassing with that tripod, I was talking to Nick as well about that, and he does a lot of PRS matches. He says he spends more time glassing or essentially watching other people shoot than he does shooting himself, because he's trying to get wind calls. He's trying to, and so a little bit more versatility with the ball head on that.
And for all the times that guys shoot at benches and whatnot, you can set it up next to you at the bench and then articulate the head all the way over 90 degrees or however much you need to articulate it over, like an angled spotting scope that you can then look into from the side. So
I will say, Jim, I'll bring this back to hunting because that's where everything should go. But carbon fiber leg sets here, like some of the others. So, I mean, if you're watching on YouTube, or even if you don't watch the whole thing, take a look at these things. They look huge. They look like they'd weigh 1 million pounds, right?
Yeah.
So for the stability that you're getting, for essentially the shooting platform that these provide to be able to execute very precise, close or long range shots, their weight is not that big of a concession in a lot of ways. I mean,
no,
they almost weigh the same as a lot of tripods that are probably a lot more, quote, compact. So you're going to deal with the size, right? But 6.1 and 7.2 there.
That's not that heavy.
It's not that heavy.
6.1 being the leveling head and the 7.2 being the ball head.
But if I was an outfitter, it might be something that I brought with me. I might even suggest that, you're not going to get all your clients to have an Arca Swiss rail on there, but you might be able to provide a rifle that has I mean, just the confidence and the stability that that's going to give somebody, whether they're experienced or maybe less experienced. I don't know, man.
So again, I don't PRS or anything like that. When we were out there, we were shooting at 6, 7, 8, 9, 1,000 off the tripod, and it was very foreign to me because like I'm either going to shoot off a barricade, off a pack, or off a bipod, and so I was kind of nervous, like, oh, how easy is this to do? Once it's locked in and you're on it, it's like shooting from a bench rest.
Mm-hmm.
And so to your point, like as an outfitter or if you were a guide and you didn't have to worry about carrying a rifle, and this would sub the weight of the rifle in your pack, if your client was, not phenomenally stable or super adept at shooting positionally, this would be a whole key to unlock unimaginable doors. Absolutely.
I mean, you're going to capitalize on opportunities that just you wouldn't have otherwise.
Yeah.
It really is incredible using a gun off a tripod. I've done it with ARs and, even at intermediate distances. It's just, you never realize how much vibration and wobble and whatnot you impart on a gun just as you're looking through it and trying to get on target until you lock it into a tripod that's very steady, and then you look through the optic. I mean, it's a very similar concept to, I guess it's the exact same concept to when you go from glassing with binos without a tripod to all of a sudden putting your binos on a tripod, and it actually almost makes your optic feel like you improved it to the next level of optical quality.
Yeah.
Even
Game
though it's the
changer.
same optic.
Yeah.
Because you can just see everything so much better.
I was more stable shooting off of a pod than I was off of a barricade. My recovery was faster off of the pod than off of the barricade. And the rifles were really quite porky that we were running. We were running like bona fide PRS rifles, Nicks and Mikes. So those guns are in the 14 to 17 pound class.
Nick's is well over 20.
He's got them steel weights on there. he's got like railroad ties bolted to his gun.
Does that gun make Lightweight Dave just short circuit?
No, because you know what Lightweight Dave's whitetail gun is?
Yeah, this is funny.
You were talking about this the other day.
It's Lightweight Dave's whitetail Wisconsin in a deer blind gun is literally like
Sport chop.
It belongs atop a tank.
It's a crew served weapon.
It is.
Yeah.
You know what though? I mean, it doesn't not make sense.
He's firing from a fixed position.
Right.
Yep.
Not going that far.
No, he's got like a favorite stand and shoots off tripod. Why not?
And he kills big deer when he does it, too.
Yeah.
Like a jerk.
Yeah.
But it was really telling. It was really neat. It was cool to get behind the gun. You can use the tripod. Nick taught me some really cool things with respect to using the tripod for, of course, you have 3 points contact on the ground, but then also bracing against the leg and capturing my buttstock. So positioning the stock in line or just off line.
Oh, okay. Right.
And bracing the buttstock with my hand against the tripod leg for additional stability, and then preloading the gun into the tripod legs. And like I said, when you're like off a barricade, even if it's like a 2x4 and you're on the wide part of the 2x4, you fire the rifle, boom, you go through your recoil sequence, you lose your target, and then you have to come back onto your shooting position, onto your bag, possibly reposition your bag, get behind your gun, find your target. And if you missed in the wind, hopefully you caught it in the field of view, or hopefully your spotter caught it in the field of view and give you a good call. Off the pod, the gun would shake. The tripod legs would never leave the ground.
Mm-hmm.
It would just, boom, shake. And when we had really good, like, slack wind, watch trace.
Yep.
So you were just like watching your
cool.
impacts.
Oh, yeah. It was, I mean, it literally was fixed to something so that it didn't move.
Well, I mean, this Radian carbon tripod, it's like bringing a structure around with you. I mean, once it's set on the ground, even though it's a mobile piece of equipment, once it's set on the ground, it's like it was built into the ground. And you're discussing things like you're putting a 20-some-odd pound rifle on top of the tripod. You're bracing against it. You're preloading into the tripod. And you're not going to hurt the dang thing by doing all of that by any means. And so that really is where something like this comes into play, and where something like the other tripods that we mentioned, while even though, like we talked about, they could hold a rifle they're not gonna do all the things that we're discussing here. It's not going to happen. Maybe again, if you're seated with some super lightweight hunting rifle and you just want a really steady base to shoot off of, but you're not necessarily putting all this load into it and all that stuff, they could work. But this is the dedicated shooting, and for like, I guess, big glass or whatever.
Purpose built for shooting. Like you said, the other ones, Arcus was compatible. For that one shot that you might take during the week could prove to be an asset, right?
Yeah.
But
absolutely.
So with this one, this was really cool. We're actually both Radians. We shot prone, seated, kneeling, crouched, and standing. Same tripod.
Oh, because when you splay
Correct.
the legs out for prone, it can go super low.
Yeah, these things lay effectively flat.
Yeah,
that is wild, man.
Yep. And so when they're all the way out, collapse it, just sort of push it in. There you go. So we would have to, with the leveling head, adjust for it because of the slight
the leveling
center
head
column.
can't go quite as low.
Right. But you can get low enough to effectively shoot prone.
Jeez.
And you can get into some really cool angles with this one. And how useful of a tool is that? I mean, to have the ability to really get into any feasible shooting position. Prone, seated, kneeling, crouched, standing.
That is super cool.
It was rad. We had some first-time shooters out there. They'd never shot a rifle before, much less shot a rifle at 1,000 yards. And we set it up in the prone position. We set the ball head into the prone position. They got comfortable behind it, adjusted the tripod accordingly, and we're making first, second, third round impacts on 1,000-yard steel. We've got some pretty sporty targets out there. We've got the rabbit at 900 yards. That one's always a great point of competition because it's like life-size rabbit size. I mean, it's a large cottontail.
Yeah.
Small jackrabbit, large cottontail, and smoking it.
For sure.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what's so wild about it. I mean, you can have all this gear, or you can have this tripod, a rifle that's set up properly, got good dope for it, and essentially a person can basically have never shot before, and you could be like, okay, press your finger to the rear, and you just hit it 1,000 yards.
Correct. Yeah. We eliminated all the uncomfortable parts about shooting, especially folks who aren't super familiar with like how to get behind a rifle, from like the, I don't know what you want to call it, the biomechanic standpoint.
Yeah.
With the Arca Swiss plate running the full length of the forearm all the way to what's called a barricade stop, which is effectively a modification of the bottom metal. The plate runs all the way back on some of those rifles. To that point, the rifle slipped all the way forward. They had to put zero influence on the gun as far as like supporting it. You didn't even have to worry about a rear support bag.
Right.
Yeah. It was just locked in, good to go. Super useful.
Oh, that's cool. These ones also have a bubble level in the tripod itself, the body of the tripod, as well as on each head. So you can not only level your tripod if you're not necessarily worried about leveling the tripod, you can also level the head independent of where the tripod is, which is pretty cool because obviously, for a lot of people out there, and when you're using something like either one of these heads, which can articulate quite a bit, but the ball head being the one that can really articulate a lot, understanding when your rifle is level prior to breaking a shot can, at those really long distances, be a deal breaker or the thing that gets you right on target. Yep. So that is another cool feature that was a must-have for the folks that were involved in the development process of these ones.
I will also mention, Jim, with the ball head, you've got that 360-degree hash mark references there. So if a person is in maybe like a tactical situation where they're watching, two or maybe even more spots, maybe it's, under darkness, using different apparatus. If you know where those, I guess, likely targets or places where you may need to shoot are, you can use those references and be like, this is at, 345 and this one is over here. And it's like just a quick reference to get back into those, positions.
It's very telling that Mark brings up the one that could be used in, the application that could be used in clandestine operations.
I was just kind of trying to think of,
when you're on Overwatch, it's nighttime, and
I was trying to look at things through the lens of MC Ryan, actually.
Oh, that is true.
Yes.
Yeah. Take note, Mark's beard. Maybe that has something to do with this.
Undercover.
Tactical beard.
We've been prodding him to grow one for years. All of a sudden, he gets a new assignment. He's undercover. He starts growing a beard.
Might as well get a Picatinny rail now.
Arca Swiss.
Yeah, right. Idiot.
Picatinny's so 1918.
Seriously. But yeah, tripods.
Not just for shooting and hunting, though. You can put cameras on them.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's definitely a thing. Are people Arca Swissing their cameras?
Big time.
Is that a thing?
That's where it came from.
That is where it came from?
Yeah, absolutely.
How about that?
Yep. It's fun to see where the different, technologies come from, and where they go, and how Arca Swiss, being a big photo video thing 6, 7, 8 years ago, was not such a big thing in the shooting world. And now it's like the thing.
Oh, it is.
And I shouldn't just say shooting, but like sport optics in general. A lot of binocular tripod adapters and spotting scopes are moving and migrating to that footprint style because it is very convenient. It's easy to take off, easy to put on. You get plate, what is the word? Congruity between all your...
Compatibility.
Yeah, compatibility. Yeah.
Well, it just makes things so easy, like as a consumer, right? You've got this tripod. Well, I've got, you got 100 different plates. Oh, I lost that plate. It's like, nope, it's all the same plate for all your stuff.
Yeah. The first time I heard somebody ask if something was Arca Swiss compatible, I thought, sounds French. Sounds like some
or
super
Swiss
hoity-toity PRS thing. Some fancy pants precision rifle guys, like 3 of them out there use this system, and now it's everywhere.
Yeah. Sounds French.
Is there anything that we missed in regards to tripods that we can think of? I feel like we talked about the various different applications.
Covered them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which one are you guys going to use the most of these tripods that we have?
For me, for what I do, just hunting, as Scott would always say, I'm going with the Summit Carbon 2.
Oh, no kidding.
Dude, 100%.
Ryan was guessing Ridgeview
I
carbon.
was. I'd have lost that bet.
Oh, you knew me. Why?
Mark,
I'm actually surprised you would have thought he would go with the Ridgeview carbon because Mark likes... Actually, no, I'm not surprised, though, because Mark likes big things. He likes big numbers. Everything to be big.
300.
300 Winchestershire Shortish Maximus.
Why would you have thought that I would have wanted that little bit longer one?
Because
it's more?
Listen, because you hunt the American Southwest. They have Ocotillo, they have Cholla, they have creosote bush. You need to stand.
I just generally just go find a place where I can see.
Look, I'd have lost money on that bet. I'm sorry, Mark. It's not that I don't know you, but I don't know you anymore.
Well, I got a few questions.
We all know this is the one you're going with, Ryan.
Yeah, yes, absolutely. There's no question.
That is also the Summit.
Jim, same question. You.
Radian carbon, because I think it's super awesome.
All right.
I just like shooting off of it.
Let's go.
It's got a V8.
That thing's got a Hemi, that's for sure. Cool. So if you have any questions around tripods, though, or some of the new ones, obviously we kind of talked a lot about the new ones. Like I said, we weren't trying to make it necessarily a full-on commercial for these new tripods in the whole lineup that we have at Vortex, but, I mean, they are what we have, and they're great examples for a lot of stuff. So hopefully it helped out. But, yeah, if you have any questions, let us know. Yes, Ryan. Ryan has a question. In fact, some of our own people on the podcast sometimes have questions, and they ask them. Please proceed.
I'm looking at the Radian specifically.
Yes.
Thinking clandestine, and probably more the Radians. You could make an emergency shelter out of that.
That's actually 100% true. If you extended it to be taller, you could make a little...
If you wrapped a decent-sized tarp around there.
Interesting.
You could have yourself a shooting rest, an observation rest,
a TP,
a TP, an emergency shelter. If you took
what's that stuff? It's the super
Dyneema.
light Dyneema. You get some super light Dyneema and you have it all around the sides. Extend the legs, wrap it around, and then you kind of wake up from your little slumber and you get out and your gun's right up there and then you.
So now you're sleeping in your tripod. Okay.
I'm almost tempted to do this. So the heads on the Radian's bayonet in and out, by the way, there's a locking mechanism that closes the collar, and then there's a quick release button. Boop, heads pop out.
Oh, yeah.
I'm thinking that's pretty much a 3-inch diameter stovepipe. I think that...
Unbelievable.
It's genius.
I think that if...
it leaves you with a fish club.
Correct. A fish club.
What is a fish club?
For bonking
Club and
fish.
fish.
I mean, I kind of figured that's what it was, but I
Okay,
didn't know
so
there was a term for it.
for those listening, I am absolutely going to attempt this.
This is going to be a fun. I don't know how it's going to turn out, but it'll be.
I'm either going to be very cold or somewhat comfortable. One of the two.
Well, Ryan,
You know what though, Ryan?
all the little tiny shelters you fit
before we
yourself
suggest somebody running a stovepipe through there, is this?
Aluminium.
It is aluminum.
You bet.
into. Full on.
Type 3 hard coat anodized.
Next up, the guys melt a Radian tripod.
I don't think it would. Carbon's actually really quite resilient to that kind of thing, and the stove would be centrally located.
Look at how much
probably.
space, how much floor space you have.
Yeah, I mean,
Do we need to have Ryan shut her down?
No,
Should we close it out?
come on, Mark. No, this is actually something that that is 100%. Now,
For those not watching,
if you-
they've begun constructing their shelters.
if you lay down, you're going to have to be in kind of the fetal position.
better than being cold in the rain outside in a field.
Ryan, it could work.
I'm not on board.
Okay, Mark, you can sleep outside.
Enjoy.
Jim and I are going to set up our Radian tents. So, yeah, have fun, bud. This is cool. I'm going to need to come up with some 3-inch stovepipe. No big.
and you're going to have to not come in contact with the stove or the pipe that's mere inches away from your body.
Look, man,
You know, were you that kid at recess when all the other kids were like, oh, we got a cool idea. We're going to try and sled down onto the halfway frozen pond and then see if we can run around on it. And you're like, actually, it's not cold enough for the ice to be 3 inches thick to support your...
I wasn't
Were you that kid?
So I will say I wasn't that kid, but let me ask you this question. Were you the kid that fell through the ice?
No, because I took calculated risks.
Oh, okay.
You poke the ice before you walk on it, and if it doesn't break through, then you can walk on it.
this is real.
He's
you
in
need
it.
me, if you need me, I'll be in my office.
He's in it, everybody. Ryan, what you would do is you would get some sort of a little apparatus, some sort of little folding arms that would have they would all connect in at the center, and they would then splay out. So then that way you could have a little bit more head space.
Or or carry a shelter with you.
Mark, that's ludicrous. This is going to work. It's
Shelters
perfect.
weigh like a pound nowadays.
This is perfect.
Yeah, but then
Okay.
that's an additional pound on top of the tripod you're already carrying. We can eliminate that entire pound by just using the tripod.
Mark, one of your favorite comedians, modern problems, modern solutions. There you have it, ladies and gentlemen.
We've done it.
Okay.
I'm glad you thought of that, Ryan.
Game to me.
We're going to have to do a video of us attempting this. Okay, we've wasted enough of your time. Thank you for listening, everybody. We'll catch you on the next one.
See ya.
Goodbye.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.
It's brilliant.
You will light yourself on fire.
Mark, I just spent 4 days in a Seek Outside 8PTP.
What's the diameter of that?
16 feet.
Where's the
Doesn't
stove?
matter. In the middle. Stove's in the middle.
16 feet. Okay. Oh, this is
Not
4.
quite 16, but
Close enough.
so
Oh yeah.
Ryan,
if you,
what I was thinking,
You take 2
some
Square
sort of
it.
see if something rested on top of the tripod and then just went and then you could drape it over, then that way you could have a little shelter out here while you sat down. Yeah, because if it just went and then
Oh yeah. Or you can carry a tarp and some paracord.
Mark, you do
for
you.
what? Okay, yeah.
You
Mark,
do you.
why don't you
I will do
Why don't
me,
you-
and then you're gonna
Here's
then
the
you're
other
gonna
thing.
crawl
Jim,
into my.
Look at what we got going on here. You take
Tarp.
your
Look at how strong you show me how your stupid little rinky-dink shack can do this. Can't do that, can it?
I don't need to do that.
ants.
Lots of
Bunch
ants.
of ants. What do you do?
An excessive
What is
amount
that,
of
a
ants.
TP for ants?
Look, here's the deal.
You guys, you and your
take
glassing,
Radian,
you and your glassing partner, Mark.
Look, now, look at what we have here.
Now the stove, Ryan, you need us to move it back this way.
You want to get Jim?
Because no, we need to show this for those who actually stick around to watch the ends of the podcasts. This way.
This is what the real
I
sign is.
honestly, I suggest they don't. I mean, for this one.
So you and your clandestine operations buddy You decide this is where you remove this thing. Your stove's over here, and then both of you are right here.
Not dying in the cold.
Not dead. Oh, MC Ryan, that's the precision gun too. Here.
And we have a small port up here.
My only favorite part of this part is Jim goes, "Oh, hey, there's my rifle."
It wasn't there before the beginning of the pod. Now this is perhaps a bit high for me.
Oh, when you need to mount a gun to your shelter.
It's like a turret. It's like you're in here.
You're not necessarily aiming; it's just
You're
show
cooking,
of force.
You're cooking hot dogs, and then all of a sudden, shh, shh. Oh, what was that? You get out of your shelter.
We would have a
We'd have a
perch.
stool
Yeah.
of some sort, a device.
If
We'd
you've
have a
ever
device.
If you've ever read the back of an MRE, rock or something.
We've had a device. Picture this as the device.
That would be a great Instagram handle, rock or something. Oh, so you've hauled the office chair in with you? Yeah.
A lot better than a tent.
I'm leaving now.
I have a Seek Outside DST, diamond-shaped tarp, that would wrap this thing up absolutely snugly. Rick has a 3-inch diameter U-turn stove from Seek. We put it in there. Easy. Or we have
run the shelter as intended.
we forgot it.
Yep. Oops.
Oh,
That happened.
We have Kenny help us out with a bunch of Coors Light 16 ounces. We cut the bottoms out of them, stick them together, stove pipe.
That's a good idea.
Have you no room for creativity?
Where's your fun bone?
He's got the beard now. He's all serious.
My gosh.
See? Look.
oh.
Oh, it's
You can have a little,
perfect.
good little air gap there. That's fine.
Well, yeah, that's all right. That's how you don't asphyxiate.
You believe her now, Mark?
I am now. Yeah. Totally talked me into it.
Well,
I can't tell if you're being facetious or if you're
Sometimes
super
It
excited.
is sarcasm.
sometimes a good idea and a can of beer is all it takes.
You know that song by Cher, Do You Believe?
I actually don't.
You can sleep outside by that bush. It's probably a bear out there, too.
Yeah, have fun.
All right, that'll wrap it up for this episode of the Vortex Nation podcast. Thanks, everybody, for listening. Hit that subscribe button so you can always stay up to date on the latest happenings over here at the Vortex Nation podcast. You can also follow us on Instagram at Vortex Nation Podcast. Again, everybody, thanks, and happy hunting and shooting. We appreciate it. Have a good one.